Steve Moran here for another episode of Foresight TV. It has been a crazy busy week. Just coming off of Senior Living Innovation Forum in Austin with a quick trip to Leading Age California in Monterey, where I did a storytelling session. And next week, I know I'm going to see a bunch of you people, that somehow doesn't sound right, right? Anyway, going to see a bunch of you at the Senior Living Executive Conference in New Orleans, and I'm so looking forward to that. Come look for us. Come look for my guests today. Let's have some conversation about what you're doing, about where the industry is. We're going to jump into this amazing conversation about this new EHR that is senior living specific. This is something the industry has needed for so long. I'm really excited about the product. I'm excited about the conversation. But first, this. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. So I don't know whether you see it or not, but my glasses are a little bit crooked in that video, and it's the way it is. And I got new glasses, and I realized they're still crooked, and so I think I must have a crooked head or something. But anyway, Justin, eras, I'm doing this wrong, aren't I?
No, you got it.
What's that?
You got the pronunciation, if that's what you were referencing.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. I was looking for help with the pronunciation. So I would love to just start by having the two of you tell the story of how August Health came into being. I think that often the founding stories are really critical to the mission. Yours is particularly unique to how you thought about the problems you're solving. And so I think we're going to start with you, Justin.
Sure, happy to. Thanks for having us on Foresight. Been hearing about you since our early days, in the industry. Our background, I'm an internal medicine physician by training, and I specialized in the care of older adults. And I led a large physician house call practice caring for frail seniors in their homes. And that was an opportunity for me to go into, dozens, if not hundreds of senior living communities and take care of my patients or your residents in those communities. And I was also in the long-term care skilled nursing space, taking care of those residents as well. And one thing that our team quickly noticed, and I was managing a team of around 30 clinicians caring for over 5,000 patients across Northern California. And the frustration I'd often hear is that when our team would go into senior living communities, it was very hard to get the information about what had been going on with the care of their residents. Med lists, care plans, the discharge information from the hospital, all of that information, vitals, was often scattered in different places. Sometimes on sticky notes or, in binders that weren't available or on whiteboards. And oftentimes there was software being used in the community to manage a lot of this information, but it was built for another industry like multifamily property management or skilled nursing, and it wasn't meeting the day-to-day operational needs. And these folks who were doing the most essential, frontline work caring for frail seniors, their systems were creating additional friction and frustration in their day, and oftentimes that led them to use workarounds. They didn't have a reliable system of record, and that impacted me ultimately. And what I saw when I started opening up these conversations about the systems they were using was I just heard a lot of frustration. And here I am living in San Francisco, and there's all this amazing, consumer grade modern technology being built by my neighbors. Literally, my co-founder Erez, I met him in the park. Our kids were on the same swing set, and we just started talking. And he'll tell you his background, but he essentially comes from this, elite, technology pedigree. And I said, what if we could bring sort of the Apple grade, it just works, ease of use in creating a purpose-built operating platform and electronic health record to meet the day-to-day operational and care needs and business needs of senior living communities, and how wonderful would it be to have all of that information reliably gathered in one place, so that you could start looking at the insights and the data to really improve your communities and your residents' experience, and ultimately make life easier for your staff to do their really essential work.
Cool. And so you started talking, and Erez, let's talk a little bit about your background and how you came at this.
Totally. Yeah, where Justin brings this really long and deep clinical background. I had spent the first half of my career working in tech. I started an analytics company. It was a mapping analytics company. And we kind of went through, Silicon Valley. We raised venture capital. We started growing a big engineering and product team. And a few years into that company and that project, we were acquired by Apple. And so I spent a lot of formative time then at Apple, really leading a big engineering and product team, and really learning that kind of philosophy of like, let's build product that really just works for the users, not just has, check the box of we have this feature, but really is what is the problem? How can we solve it elegantly for the user? And I was sort of, so I spent a few years there. I left Apple to really focus on something new. And that was a period when I met Justin. And he was, like he said, we met at the playground. We started chatting and he was telling me, well, look, I go into these communities every day and they just don't have that level of tech. Tech is really underserving this industry. And I remember he said, let's go visit one, and I said, what do you mean? We're just going to go visit a community? And he's like, yeah. So, for him, it was day to day. He was always in and out of these communities. And I think I've been in one or two communities in my life. And so we walked into a community, small community here in South San Francisco. And I remember that day they were doing a move-in of a new family. And so there was a family sitting on one side of a conference room, the staff on the other side. And then in between them was like 200 or 300 pieces of paper. They were trying to fill out all that move-in information. There was like an admissions agreement and some state forms and so on. And my mind was a bit blown coming from this world of Apple where we don't use paper anymore to fill out important health information. And they were looking for, do I have this right document? And did you fill out this appendix? And we have an arbitration clause here. And it was like it struck me how much opportunity there was to build really like great tech experience for the industry. And so that was really how we got started and continued to visit communities. Fast forward today, we're now in hundreds of communities and really we've built that system of record in a real way for thousands of residents.
Cool. So I really love this. I'm very sympathetic to this move-in paperwork. My mom spent about her last 8 months in a licensed senior living community in California, and the process of doing paperwork. It just is indelibly marked in my mind because you're right. It was probably an inch and a half worth of paperwork and no way to know. So have you been able to digitize all of that admission process as part of what you're doing?
That was our starting point because what we realized is that the residents coming in have this really deep, rich life history. And that moment where that move-in takes place, where the family is filling out all of that information, the personal life history questionnaire, the health history questionnaire, this is a really crux moment in this process. The family's distilling all of this information from that resident's past. And they're very motivated to tell you that story because they want you to have the information to provide the best care for the residents. But this information was all being put onto a bunch of different paper documents. Oftentimes, duplicative work was being done by the family. That was frustrating for them. And then the signing process sort of feels a little bit like a legalistic affair with hundreds of pages when really the family's undergoing this deeply meaningful sort of emotional transition. And it doesn't really meet the moment when you present them with a legal sort of experience. And then finally, all that paperwork starts gathering dust in a binder somewhere. So what we saw was, let's take this moment, make it an efficient, delightful experience for the family, take some of the weight off the staff that's driving this paperwork back and forth, but really drive the experience in a digital way to get the most valuable, important information that can then directly transfer into the care planning work and into the activities and into the resident's experience. And that information is living and breathing. It's going to transfer into that digital health record in a way that can be leveraged by the staff. And all that work the family did to tell you that story, that's really there and will be carried forward. And so that move-in experience was our starting point. And it differentiates us because we have that sort of DocuSign on steroids for senior living experience integrated right into our EHR, with the e-signatures that are really meaningful in that move-in, but they also come into play on an ongoing basis when you're updating the care plan and the family signing that, or you're renewing a lease and the family signing that. The family has that portal, and it creates a better initial entry point. A lot of the leading brands in senior living and even like luxury, high class, or middle income communities, that initial experience for the family is when it involves faxing or emailing and printing and scanning or driving around stacks of paper. It's really below the brand that they're creating. It's not the experience that lives up to the brand that they've created. And so what we've done is essentially we transition that paper experience into a premium digital experience that saves time and delights both the staff and the residents, and then activates that information into the digital health record.
Cool. So I want to actually go beyond that, though, because that's a single point in time, and I think it's a really critical point in time. Like I said, my experience, it's like I'm trying to get mom settled into this new unit, this new living environment, and I'm spending an hour doing paperwork, and it was. I love the community that she was in. It was a great experience for the family, but you're absolutely right. It completely soured it. But I think the other thing that I'm really, really interested in that you guys have really tackled is this idea that you have sort of ongoing collecting, managing data. As an industry, we've gotten a lot better at collecting data, I think, but what we're at, figuring out how to use that data to improve the lives of both the residents and the caregivers, the community, is an area that I think is in many cases in its infancy, and yet you're sort of much further along in that. And so, can you talk about that?
Totally. I think the industry's starting to. I think, as you said, industry starting to realize, hey, we can't, we need to start collecting data. We're in the 21st century, it's 2023, we can't operate with all on paper. So we need to build a system to look and analyze our data. But what we found is that if the staff aren't motivated to kind of in the field start collecting that data, so putting in an incident or recording someone's weight or those kind of really common daily things, the data just doesn't get into the system. So we find among our customers, they've spent these big investments saying, okay, we now have this, this way to collect all our data and pipe it in, and then we're making sure we're capturing all the care, and that's good from a compliance perspective and a care revenue perspective. But then we look at it and we say, well, what's the source data? Is it coming into this beautiful system that you have envisioned? And they're like, then we look deep into it and we say, no, the caregivers are using the whiteboard instead of my system to track all the showers. And the reason they're using the whiteboard is because the system that the caregivers have to use every day is hard for them to use. And so it's easier for them to just stick to what they know. And so where we really have emphasized is let's build a tool and a platform that's really enhancing the everyday life of the caregiver, and is that Apple grade, super easy to use experience so that they can enter and use the system as it's intended. When we, and a really tangible kind of, I'll give you a data point here, is we often switch companies onto August Health from these legacy platforms, and we often get an export of the data from those systems. And so we can see how complete the record is before we do the import into our system. And so we've come up with a metric where we can actually look at every resident and say, do they have a phone number? Do they have a physician? Do they have a COVID vaccination card? And, among 20 or 30 different metrics. And we've turned that into a metric called data completeness score. And when we do these exports from some of these old systems, we see that score is usually hovering around 20 or 30%. So the data is only 20 or 30% complete. Then, 6 months later, we run the same score on the August health data, and that score is in the 90s. And that goes to show that really this building a system that really empowers the staff and is easy for them to use builds into their daily workflow a system that just becomes a real system of record. And out of that are so many, the things that you want to talk about. Those predictive analytics, there's like care revenue analytics to make sure you're capturing care. There's move-in analytics. There's like staff incident, maybe we're finding a trend that there's more incidents at night. You can't do any of those really kind of awesome things that people talk about with data if the data is not there in the first place. And so my appeal to sort of our customers when we talk to them is like, let's get the data in, let's figure out how to get that score to 90, and then we can do all these really fancy things that we're talking about. And so really it starts at the baseline.
So let's talk a little bit about, I want to dream a little bit about what you can do when you start collecting this data, because I think one of the, and I know you'll have much more color to add to this, but as you know, virtually every senior living organization is struggling with occupancy right now. And we mostly think in terms of occupancy as moving more residents in. But in my view, one of the easiest ways to really solve the occupancy problem is to increase length of stay. And to me, data becomes sort of, because if I have 100 units and I can increase the average length of stay by 1 month, that's really like an extra 8 residents, right? When you look at it, I mean, the numbers are really phenomenal. So can you talk about the kinds of things you can do with data to be able to increase length of stay and increase satisfaction, those kinds of things?
We had a really tremendous meeting yesterday with a customer of ours that has around 50 buildings in 13 or 14 states. And they had a legacy software platform that they had been using for many years. The staff at the front line didn't have the tools they needed to do their incident management on that software. So a lot of that incident management was happening on paper. And so we shared with them what we call org analytics. It's essentially the insights that you can learn from across your whole portfolio, if you're at that executive level. When we went into the care part of that analytics dashboard, they immediately wanted to look at the incidents. And then they saw one of their communities was sort of an outlier. They had more incidents. And they said, oh, can you double click on that? And we did. And they saw that, 74% of the incidents were falls. And they're like, that's a lot of falls. Can we look deeper and see, who's falling and who accounts for a lot of those falls? We're like, yeah, sure. So we clicked to the next level. And then they saw that one resident had fallen 16 times in the last 90 days. And then they saw that the next one below that had fallen 7 times. And then immediately, the operational and clinical leads, like light goes off. They're like ready to pick up the phone and call. And what they said was, well, pretty much they're like, okay, this is magical for us. What we tried doing before was have hundreds of pages faxed to us where we could go through them and try to pick out all of the incidents from across the notes and incidents that were all in one stack, and try to audit that information to create a history. Of course, it never would get done. Now that information is just at their fingertips and it's immediately actionable, where the leadership can see what's going on, but also at the community level, they can pick up on these trends much more easily and handle these things in a preventative, or secondary prevention. After it's happened, they can instill the intervention to work again. And I guess the tool itself, where we have the incident management, has all sorts of things built in to make sure that incident is properly, reviewed and actioned upon, and that leads to sort of a process of continuous improvement. So I guess that's just one example of the way that the data can flow from sort of on high at the organization level and quickly drill down to impact an individual resident's life and even act in a preventative fashion.
So one of the challenges that I hear from operators a lot is that the vendor community comes in and has some sort of a new wonderful tool that's going to solve every problem in the world, right? Or whatever particular space it is. But what ends up happening, and the thing that operators really worry about is that really two things: is that it requires the attention of caregivers, it requires the attention of staff, which at least potentially takes them away from actually having interactions with residents. And often it takes somebody who's kind of a champion for that particular platform. And so, can you talk about how you make it easier for residents? I mean, for staff rather than harder? Because I think this is like the big thing that nobody likes to talk about, or at least the vendor communities, is how do you make this something that actually makes the lives of caregivers better rather than worse?
Totally. I mean, I think, this goes back to the DNA of kind of how we operate. We realized really early on, and we told you the story of how Justin and I met and started visiting a community. After that first visit where I saw that movement, we went and kept visiting communities, and we probably visited 20 different communities here in the Bay Area. And in that time, we started getting a little bit more prescriptive. Say, what if we had this? What if we had this? One of those customers or one of those companies said, "Hey, I want to buy this. Yes, I would use this platform that you guys are." And we looked at each other and said, "I guess we need to start a company," because we hadn't even incorporated yet. So the next day we incorporated the company and then sent that customer kind of a contract or a LOI.
Cool.
And the reason I'm telling you this is that the way that LOI was structured was, don't pay us anything. All we want to do is spend time with your staff. We want to go on a med pass. We want to watch an admission. We want to, listen to a sales call. We want to go to your ED shift meeting. We basically sat with that community for almost a year, watching every single, what is your dining services person, what report do they need to cook the meals for that day? And we looked at the report. We watched them cook those meals. So really embedded ourselves in this community and a few others for more than a year, really building with them, saying what are the staff doing every day? How are they going from shift to shift? How are they pouring the meds and then passing them? Or are they passing, pouring before the pass? Every single detail. And then we built a platform and our tools to really support the caregivers in that way. That DNA, kind of how we started, continues today. So when we build new features, we really go to our best customers and then we start showing them, even in the design phases, here are the mocks of this feature of how we're going to build this new functionality. Here's a chart of incidents over time. How would you use this? And so that iterative design approach really is baked into how we've built the company. And we continue really, we don't think we can come in and say, here's the new way to do things. It's really building with the industry that has been our success, the key to our success so far. Along with the community, we've also brought on sort of industry leaders to advise us. And so there's folks like Joel Goldman, Josh Allen, really folks that are like consultants to big companies in the industry who have also advised us on sort of how we're going to do care plans. What really happens on the ground when a nurse does an assessment? How many pages should it be? And really, our assessment is probably the easiest, but still most comprehensive assessment there is, out there today. So I think that's a bit about the DNA of the company. And maybe I can let Justin talk and answer your question in a different angle about really just the feedback we're getting from our customers. But I think that really is an important part of who we are, is we're building really with the industry here.
Cool. Justin?
At its core, for a system of record, electronic health record, for senior living to be successful, it needs to be intuitive, easy to use, and it needs to add value to the staff on a day-to-day basis. So they're invested in coming back and putting the information into the system where it's easy enough to use, and then it creates automation, essentially saving them time because they don't have to do redundant work, or it flows the assessment into the service plan, and then the stuff in the service plan automatically goes into care routines, for the frontline staff. All of those things just save hours in the staff's day. So they're invested in getting all of that information in, and they can easily do it. And when they have a new team member, they can pick it up really without training. That's unheard of in this industry. And I think that's why we're seeing that 20% resident completion score, and why, you can put a Tableau on a system, but if you put a Tableau on a 20% resident completion score, you're actually working on skewed or biased data. So because we've made it so easy to use and get that information, and we've built a reliable system, and that actually the end effect of that is that we're automating a lot of the low value busy work that the staff has to do, that creates frustration and friction, and ultimately, dissatisfaction and churn of staff in senior living. We're automating a lot of that, effectively enabling them to do more of the real person-centered frontline care in the resident. So we're not like tech optimists, like we can do caregiving through our software. We're trying to build tools to empower staff to more efficiently do support high quality work that is actually done with their hands, in that resident's room, in front of their room. So we want to unblock them from a lot of those inefficiencies so they can do that real person-centered, deep care at the bedside, or at the, in the resident's room and living environment.
And
yeah,
and
what's
to that? I gotta say this. Let me just give you 4 stats. We did a customer survey a few months ago. This is the results. 93% of staff say they save time every month. 78 say August Health has reduced their stress at work. 90% say that August Health is more friendly than other senior living software. And 80% of August Health users would prefer to work at communities that use August Health. As in, staff would prefer to choose companies that are using August Health in their next job.
So I love this. Yeah, the thing I started to say before you jumped in, and I'm so glad you jumped in, is that what you should do, among other things, is you look at what August Health is doing as a recruitment and a retention tool, because it makes the job better, right? So I'm a huge fan of how In-N-Out Burger, and I hope you don't mind this stretch, right? But I'm a huge fan of how In-N-Out Burger and Chick-fil-A are places that people like to work, right? It's cooler to work there because they've made the job better, right? And what you're really talking about is making the job better for the communities that are using your tool. And so this is so powerful. We're running short on time. There are 2 things I really want to hit on, though. So you've got a big announcement with a new company that you just signed. Can you talk a little bit about that? With Westmont?
Sure. So we've been developing partnership with Westmont, where they have 20 odd communities and thousands of residents, largely in California, also in Oregon. They're premier operator, and we've signed on Westmont to deploy our EHR, in all of their communities, and our move-in platform. We say EHR. We think of ourselves as a broader platform than just an EHR. It's just sort of a terminology that the industry knows well. But we see ourselves as a care operation and business operating platform as well. And so we rolled out with Westmont to half their buildings yesterday. Had 25 people on the sales call, 35 people on the clinical call, and then the software has gone live, for half of their buildings. So it's an honor to work with Westmont. They're just a marquee customer for us, and sort of continue that trajectory of growth that we're having. We started out of California, and Westmont is a largely California operator, but now we're operating in most states, and have scaled with large, national operators.
Right. And what can you talk to me a little bit about the process of converting over? I think that's always a big challenge when you're talking about a system. How long does it take? What's that effort look like?
Yeah, I think the fact that that we're already live in some Westmont buildings is a testament to that. I think we signed that contract was signed a couple weeks ago, and so I think we've really not followed the industry and sort of how long implementation takes. We really said, well, what is actually possible here, not like what is status quo. And so where we've heard communities, signing up and then being months into an implementation, we measure hours in the weeks. We had another operator, a large operator in many states, with 40, 50 buildings. And we basically did a building every other day. We took the whole org live in 2-3 months. And so that velocity is something that doesn't really exist in the industry today. And the reason we're able to do that is we've really built, again, given the kind of tech and engineering background that we have, tools to make that process faster. And so we are kind of full service. We usually send scanning service to go and scan all records in the community. And then we take care of basically everything else from there. And so we do digitization of those documents. We craft their assessments, we craft their admissions agreements all right onto the platform. And that's, it's about a week of work to get all of that done for our community. And then we go live. And as Justin said, usually one training is enough to send the community live. And so It really is, it's a sea change from what's out there today on implementation.
Yeah. We just want to emphasize in quick follow-up that when we say partnership, we say that because we see ourselves as part of the team, of the operators who sign up with us. Our customer success team feels like a colleague. And so that the nature of that partnership is really they're our customer, but we view ourselves as the relationship more as a partnership.
Great. And next week, you're going to be, as we are, you're going to be at the Senior Living Executive Conference in New Orleans. What are you talking about? How do we find you there?
We are. Yeah, go. I mean, so I'll be speaking. I'm speaking at one on Monday at 11 or 11:30, and I'm talking about some of the topics that we talked about today, using data to improve operations in senior living. Speaking with a great operator from Cogir, and then we'll also be there in Mass. Several of us are there. We'll have a booth at the exhibit hall, and so we'll make sure we'll definitely be present there.
Good.
I think our email has been shared, but by all means, reach out to us. We'd love to meet up at Argentum.
Yep. So look forward to seeing you there. Thank you very much. I am so excited when I see new players coming in and just saying we can do it better. I would make the comparison with Welcome Home, who's also a partner with us, and they came into a place where things had been completely entrenched, and they did exactly what you guys did. They went out and they looked at it and they said, how do we create a workflow where salespeople actually like this system, and will you be able to use it to improve the way they do business? And they've made a huge impact. I expect that you'll be, as you're a year or two behind them in terms of doing that, but I expect that you guys will be the dominant player here in the next 12 to 18 months. And so for those of you who are operators looking at this is your opportunity to be on that cutting edge. And I think the best part of this whole talk has actually been the survey results that you had in talking to the team members and how enthusiastic they are about it. So thank you very much. Thank you for carrying. Thank you for being willing to build a better platform for our industry, because it's not just about business. It's about changing the lives of people who live and work in senior living. So I'm going to give you last word. Erez, we'll start with you and then go to Justin, and then we'll sign off.
Just thanks for the kind words. We like John and Welcome Home and really see them as great innovators. And we're working on integrations with them at several of our customers. And I'm happy to be introduced with you and be on today. So thanks so much.
Great. Justin?
I'd say, our mission is to empower the essential work of caring for our elders. And we do that by supporting the teams who are out there, rolling up their sleeves and doing that hard work. We believe that they deserve the best tools and technologies to enable them to be there with the residents and provide the best care. So that's why we exist. And we're really excited about our growth in the industry and look forward to meeting many of you at Argentum, or reach out. We would love to continue the conversation.
Great. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend. Safe travels. And I look forward to hanging out in person next week.